Welcome back to Block TV. This is Trader's Take. We take a dive into the charts with our very own, the man with the plan, Joe Saz. Thanks for joining us.
Hey, how's it going, Yona?
Very good. Well, I know I'm doing good. Tell me how the markets are doing.
Yeah, so I want to jump straight in the 15-minute chart here because it's kind of getting pretty serious. You can see that in these over here in this area. Well, let's start with saying it has been playing out pretty technically. Nines have been pretty solid. Nine sell here, nine sell here was perfect. It's been a pretty solid market to trade. Still dangerous though. Just be very careful. But this is pretty much the main reason why we shredded through 72.50 all the way down to just over 7,100, and then came all the way back to 72.70. I mean, this is like absolute insanity right now. We got a lot of buy volume. Maybe see if we can drop this on a smaller time frame and catch the majority. Yeah, it looks like there's a lot of volume to the downside, but there's a lot of serious buying going on too. So it's just I'm not really sure yet. I know that I would say the bearish voice in my head is saying, this is quite obviously a breakdown, and I don't think that this is the first wave of sellers. But I'm bullish for a bounce. I can't believe we haven't already, and that's part of what is going on in the daily. We had similar RSI conditions oversold. Let's see here. This was September 26th, not long ago. Excuse me. So the fact that we're nearing these areas, or kind of hitting these oversold conditions, signals to me, as well as other technical indicators, that we are due for a bounce. But we might not get it immediately. We have had an experience where the RSI, when we broke down out of the descending triangle from 6,000 to 3, we did have an experience where we hit an RSI low of something around 9, a value of 9. Maybe like 8 to 9 or so. So I mean, could this thing get worse? I mean, certainly. I'm really concerned about this bounce idea. I feel like I need to probably set up some stops, and I probably should have done that when we were at 73 and waited it out a little bit. But I really feel like we're due for a bounce here pretty soon.
Mm-hmm. I mean, there's been a lot of speculation out there. What's causing this downturn? What's your take on it?
I think this is pretty much just typical market action. I don't think much of the particular China news or anything like that. I think that we had one market cycle that was completely manipulated, and we had a ton of buyers in that market, and I think we exhausted a ton of buying power there. And then we have a much more organic looking and feeling market, with the selling nature being at the end. It's it feels like total noob selling and stuff like that. It's something that I would think is a different market cycle, and I think the psychology in that is different. Where we had a very bullish mentality running up past 10K. Obviously the memes were back in play, the Vegeta memes and all this stuff. And the hundreds of tweets going around Twitter saying, "Oh, we're never gonna see it, 4-digit Bitcoin again." People thought we were taking right the heck off. So I think now this is basically just a market cycle where FOMO buyers are now turning possibly into sellers, selling some stupid bottoms, and that could push this price a bit lower. I think smart money is going to wait for a good opportune moment. And that's going to have to do with the psychological sentiment of the market space. But I'm expecting at least a little relief bounce here pretty soon.
Mm-hmm. I mean, there's been a lot of speculation. Everyone has an opinion kind of about the movement of the coin here. Do you feel like there's been a lack of attention given to your stellar t-shirt collection? Today you're rocking the Rick and Morty. I want to give it a shout out.
Yeah, huge shout out to such brilliant creative people, unlike altcoiners. I would say yeah, thanks for the compliment.
No problem. Take us to some altcoins. Let's check out how the rest of the market's faring.
Yeah, and so just a quick note, it does look like we're stalling, which is okay for this breakdown. The past couple days we have been stalling out. It's a little sketchy still, and I'm not too happy to see it, but let's just hope that we continue to stall out and then break out to the upside. For my sake, for Bitcoin's sake, for everyone's sake. Quick look at dominance. Bitcoin holding steady at 68%. No big deal here. No huge changes. All right, we're defaulting to Litecoin USD right now. I mean, this is pretty much looking similar. You know, we had a small day of relief. I mean, just imagine if this was the relief bounce. This is going to be terrible for price. But yeah, Litecoin's now already closed below this horizontal support area, which was a bottom of a descending triangle, not the descending triangle. Uh, I think Litecoin had a very different structure than Bitcoin. It didn't really have that huge descending triangle. But we're now at, like, I would say probably I think the equivalent of Bitcoin's 6,000 was more likely this line here, $111. We're now at the value of Bitcoin's, if this is 6,000, I would probably say this is 4,500 or so. This would probably be the bottom at 3,100. Yeah. So we're in that area already. I mean, this is looking pretty ugly. I'm not too bullish on Litecoin. Huge volume on that sell-off right here. Yeah, this is looking pretty bad, but this is also looking. It has the same signatures. I mean, look, the ton of selling happened right at the bottom. So then, and this candle's kind of hard to say what the volume was. I'd have to break this down quite a bit further. But over here, this is just looking like bottom selling to me for now, unless this is the people that are front running what could be a much worse collapse in weeks, months, maybe even, I don't even want to throw this on the table, but years to come. I'm not one of those people that thinks that we're in like a 3-year bear market or anything like that. I just think that we have a lot of price action to get out of the way before the halving, and then onwards and upwards.
Mm-hmm. All right. Well, definitely not looking pretty so far. What else do you have for us in the market?
I always like to take a look at XRP. It's one that I really have a passion for arguing with XR peeps, except now I've blocked most of them. Let's see. This is pretty good. We're spending some time in the wick space. It had a relief bounce. I mean, the whole day had a nice little bounce. We're on the eve of a 9 buy. This thing took a 9 buy over here, had a 1-day bounce and a continuation of the trend, which was down. So this might be headed toward lower numbers. I think that this has counter trended, and I don't like to bet twice against a dud 9. This wasn't a dud 9 though. Technically, it had a 1 to 4 candle pullback. So this could be a dud 9. Very, very easily could be a dud 9. I'm just trying to scan through and see if we have any other examples in recent history. Not seeing it, so I'm not going to spend too much time. A little bit, and you might have gotten stopped out here. Plus 6, yeah, you definitely would have gotten stopped out on this one if you're trading with stops. Well, yeah. So pretty much, long story short, XRP. I'm kind of in the middle. Yeah, I've been talking about the market-wide spaces, looking at what's probably going to be some sort of relief bounce. I'm assuming it's going to be a little more powerful than this. I'm talking more of a trend of a bounce. And it looks like XRP is on a TD sequential 9 buy. I would say that this might be consistent with the overall market narrative. So I'm not going to be too surprised or upset if XRP bounces. I would be expecting this for now. We have reached my wick space target. I was thinking, obviously I was thinking we would hit the wick space. I was hoping it would be the tail end of it. But I think that we could, bounce the market. But again, XRP might be might do its own little party. Who knows?
Mm-hmm. Well, 9 bounce, 9 dud. Let's see how it develops. Take a look at Ethereum. Yeah,
sounds good. Ethereum. I'm trying to. I feel like I heard something. It's not coming to the top of my head. Wow, this is looking strikingly similar to Litecoin. I think the only difference is that Litecoin's 9 was a day before, same as Bitcoin's. So I mean, we pretty much had a dead play here. This isn't really a bounce, This isn't a 9 buy opportunity. I wouldn't consider it. I'm not Tone, and I haven't specialized and mastered the craft of the sequential. But I would say that off this 9, this is a really, really weak bounce. I mean, this 9 probably killed anyone that bought it. Most of the people that bought it. So probably anyone except these people down here. So I would say Ethereum is looking pretty nasty, and I kind of put this into the category of all the other altcoins and what's going on. I mean, everyone that bought up this run and FOMO'd in. I mean, look at some of these volume spikes. Like tons of people were buying altcoins and Bitcoin and stuff during this run. And I think that means that a lot of these people, I mean, just imagine like FOMOing in to Bitcoin on its way to 20K, it breaking down violently, and then you having to tell yourself, oh, I'm going to hodl, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do that, and then doing it again. I can't imagine what kind of psychological impact this would have on not necessarily a hodler of the last resort, but more likely someone that's trying to preserve or increase their capital on something like Bitcoin, especially considering that in this space, it's really looked down upon. I mean, from the outsiders, right? And most of the people, maybe not most, but my personal experience in Bitcoin, and I believe this is something that can be shared with many others, is that most people have no idea what it is, so you're constantly criticized for what you do. And so I can't imagine that people that there's some people that are in it, for the long run, and there's some people that are trying to dip their toes in it, and if they keep buying highs and price crashes, then they're probably going to become prospective sellers at a certain point. So I think that's what we're looking at across the wider market, across the entire market. It's just getting ugly. We're blowing through some strong sequential indicators. I mean, look at the last 9 sell. This was an amazing play. So killing a 9 buy is at a pretty critical moment there when the market conditions are probably oversold on this as well. Let's just take a quick look at this. Will just be 1 second. Moving nav. Nope. Relative strength. I don't know. I was looking for RSI and I just couldn't see it. All right. Yeah. So I mean, oversold conditions across the board. I would say the market's due for a little bounce. If we don't get it, honestly, I think it is time to probably set up some stop positions in case we head down to 6,300 or 6,200 or something like that. I think it's very possible that the market can really be dramatic and overreact to some of these negative price setups.
Mm-hmm. Well, then outside of the charts, the big news over the weekend was, of course, that scuffle between Binance's CZ and the block. They're each going at each other. We all have heard of it outside the charts. Can we take a look at BNB and see if there was any movement on the charts?
Yeah, it's so funny. CZ keeps trying to bring Bitcoin price into this. Let's go Binance Tether. Don't like that, but let's see here. This was a couple days ago, maybe 3, maybe 2. I mean, BNB was already trending down. Not to mention, we've had already a bearish crossover, the short long term, short intermediate, or intermediate long, short intermediate. Man, that got my brain moving. So I would say this probably had no negative impact on price. I think CZ is just a piece of trash, and I think it's a very terrible play to try to be bringing Bitcoin price into that little drama. A lot of people are definitely slamming the block right now, obviously for a good reason. But I'm just saying, I think it's crazy that CZ is really trying to attach Bitcoin price to this particular news article. And like, no, this had nothing to do with that. This was CZ Binance, and it seems to have had absolutely no impact on price. This was already trending down into a 9. I mean, 7% back to back 7% moves. That's to be expected in an emotional market, especially one where we have a ton of buyers at the top. So we're on a 9 buy. I mean, this is consistent with the possible relief, couple small relief period for the market. This looks like a perfected 9 buy. It's already red. I mean, the market looks terrible right now, and it's like, how heavily do I believe in this bounce? I mean, I think it's going to happen, but I hope I'm not delusional. I might have to flip and close out all my longs and take 8K off the table and just see our way down.
Mm-hmm. I mean, and you said that you're not seeing it in the charts in BNB, but you did mention a little bit. What is your take on the whole CZ, the block? It seems like you had a little take there.
Yeah, I would say I think it's interesting. I think Dudas might have put out some news prematurely. From what I heard, there might be some interpretation type stuff where maybe police were walking into a building or invited in or something. I've seen a few different takes on that. So I mean, I understand. It's a big news piece that would definitely shock the market. But this is still such an isolated community that I don't see the impact on price. So I think CZ is a piece of trash for trying to bring Bitcoin price into this. I think news is news, and you go on the best information that you have available at the time. And if that news is saying that, well, we have a report of officers, entering the building, without, some sort of I don't know what the story was. Obviously, I'm not the one that the private source, but if there was, if they were saying, oh yeah, it looks like some cops are in here right now, they're in the corner office, they came in looking angry. Who knows? That easily could have turned into a bigger story. So I don't know what Dudas is going to do to play this out, but I know CZ is threatening to sue. Maybe he will, maybe he won't. I know he did delist BSB, which is probably the only good thing that I've seen him do. So who knows what's going to happen.
Mm-hmm.
But I do think it'll be an interesting drama to watch play out. I'm pretty sure that I don't think CZ is really going to win much out of this lawsuit, other than causing the block to spend a ton of money or something like that. I would just assume would be the most strategic play if that's what his goal was.
Mm-hmm. Well, Joe, you're claiming not to be the private source. That's exactly what the private source would say. Now, speaking of Chinese authorities raiding or not raiding offices, have you seen any reaction from the market? There's been a lot of talk of Chinese authorities cracking down. Adobe Yuan reported that 39 different crypto firms have been targeted by Chinese authorities. Have you been seeing any reaction in the markets to this news that possibly Chinese authorities are really cracking down in China?
No, I'm not really seeing the China stuff as a big player, the Chinese news. Yeah, it is a large, maybe not untapped market, but, highly regulated. I mean, Bitcoin pretty much goes against, everything like communist, right? It changes the economic ecosystem from one of control to one of freedom. So I would expect China to repetitively be pushing out Bitcoin FUD. And as someone that's hardened and has been in the space for years now, this is not a big deal to me, and I can't imagine to anyone else. The fact was that when China did say something along the lines of we're going to start allowing Bitcoin exchanges, I think that was misinterpreted information. They were talking about certificates or whatever, or some sort of certificate to exchanges, and basically the wording was misinterpreted. So I really don't think that China is going to be a major player and create all these, on-ramps for the Chinese to be able to buy, transact, and use Bitcoin. I think, China is just going to kind of hover in the middle of, FUD and potentially bullish news. I don't think the news of China, welcoming Bitcoin a little more, or using it as a currency or anything like that is going to pump the price. I think if there was going to be something that was going to pump the price, and it has something to do with national governments and fear of their control over their citizens, these things would have been happening already. And I don't think that just tells me that we're not ready right now. This would be happening in France. This would be happening in Hong Kong. This would be happening in tons of places where the people are in conflict with their oppressors, the government. And this is just not happening. It's kind of happening. We might hear some stories of people mining Bitcoin in Venezuela or XYZ, small potato stuff. But what we need is for this to happen on an adoption level scale, a mass adoption level scale. And that continues to not happen. So it's, as far as China is concerned, I would say the one big thing that should have happened would be if Hong Kong protesters were serious about really, sticking it to the man and all this stuff, they would be, disappearing from the books. And what better way to do that than Bitcoin? Same with France, Venezuela, possibly Argentina, possibly Chile. I mean, we've seen, I think it was Chile that lit their central bank on fire. If I remember, I mean, there's so many things going on. My head might be spinning from all the stuff going on in the world. But, we're seeing people understand that banks are failing to serve them, of course, and governments are protecting those that are failing to serve them. But we're not at the point where people are willing to substitute to Bitcoin just yet. And I hope that day comes soon, because it's much needed.
Mm-hmm. I mean, listen, seeing governments and central banks being against crypto is nothing new, especially authorities cracking down on supposed scams. But in your opinion, let's say tomorrow we wake up to a world where US, China, all the major governments say, hey, we love crypto, everyone adopt crypto, and crypto adoption actually happens. Ignoring price, ignoring use cases, what effect will that have on specifically the trading market?
On the trading market, I mean, unfortunately, that kind of combines something. It brings price back into the mix. I think that if Bitcoin is adopted massively, right, globally, I still think there's going to be traders trading Bitcoin. There's probably people that some currency against the US dollar, long XYZ, long this against that. I always think there will be trading, but I personally will not be trading when Bitcoin becomes too volatile, particularly to the upside. Now, if we're talking about mass adoption, hyper Bitcoinization type mass adoption everywhere, like what you said, right? In this instance, I would say that I'm not really going to be a trader. I would rather hodl and use and accumulate at that point through organic means. I just don't know if too many people will be willing to trade and gamble their Bitcoin away. Right now, I think the market's a little underdeveloped, and I think it's a lot easier to trade in a small sample pool. Obviously, you get 40% pumps that can completely, shock you and liquidate millions and millions of, trades, right? But that's one disadvantage to such an illiquid trading pool. But when the usage grows and the people across the world get involved in something like Bitcoin, I think the price will be high. It'll probably be traded, but I'm just not going to be interested in trading in a very, very, a currency as a currency such as Bitcoin, which has the potential to be a cornerstone of an entire global economy.
Mm-hmm. So you foresee that if Bitcoin actually does become, let's say, a world economy or even an economy, a currency on the scale of the dollar, of the euro, you foresee, the Bitcoin market actually, changing and resembling just another Forex, market, another foreign exchange. Its trades will just look like the dollar trades. It will not remain, the kind of doing the action you see now.
I would assume it would get far more stable, because think about, the hyper. Yeah, to answer your question, yeah, I think it would become much more stable. In fact, it would probably grow in value with time, much more similarly to how gold looks in time with its buying power against the US dollar, which has drastically decreased its buying power, especially in the past decades. I believe since 1965, the US dollar has lost about 95% of its value. So, I mean, shorting the dollar, it makes a ton of sense, right? And that's a global reserve currency right there. Now, Bitcoin, on the other hand, I think it's going to get to a point where goods and services are relative to Bitcoin. They will be changing, but in the opposite direction. Whereas a gallon of milk will, instead of decrease in price, increase in price. I remember being a kid and buying a gallon for $2 or something, and now, a half gallon of organic is $6. So, you're essentially paying $12 per gallon versus 10 to 15 years ago, where it was about $2 for probably a similar product. I don't have all these, perfect examples in my head, but, on the flip side of that, imagine if you charge 5 sats for a loaf of bread. How is that going to drop to 4, in 10 years after that price is managed, and 3, 10 years after that. I'm not 100% sure, but I do think the fact that prices will be relative to Bitcoin in my future that I see, that makes Bitcoin far more stable, and I don't think we'll have the same volatility. There still will be trading probably, but I just don't think it'll be the same nature. And as far as Forex, yeah, that'll probably be the most closely related type of action. But again, I'm not a Forex expert, but I would assume it would probably land in the same ballpark in a way, probably just far less volatile than it is now.
Mm-hmm. So if it wants to become stable and not volatile, you're out. You're here for the adrenaline, baby. You're here for the big ups, the big downs.
Yeah, I'm an adrenaline junkie, a volatility junkie, as they say in Bitcoin. Pretty much anyone that trades that leveraged, trades any leveraged positions in Bitcoin, they call volatility junkies. I might not jump off a cliff, but I will 30x a dump.
Well, you're already complaining. I mean, not already complaining. You're already sounding like an old man saying that in the future, you'll be like, I remember when one Satoshi bought me a slice of pizza. Well, listen, let's hope you're right. Let's hope the value of Bitcoin keeps going up and up so we may tell our kids and our grandkids the wonderful stories of buying things with mere Satoshis. Thank you so much, Joe Saz, for letting us know and giving us your take on the crypto market. And for all you at home, if you want to know more about blockchain and cryptocurrencies, stay tuned at blocktv.com.
For more news and updates, follow us on Twitter.